You're listening to Kayfabe Killers, where the stories you thought you knew start to fall apart, and the line between performance and reality isn't just blurred, it's broken. Because in wrestling, the most dangerous moments don't always happen in the ring. Sometimes they happen behind it, and sometimes they're the ones that never get talked about at all. They called him the innovator of offense, not a nickname built for television, not something handed to him, something earned in the quiet places where wrestlers watched each other and learned. Chris Kanyon. If you knew what you were looking at, you saw it. The way his matches moved, the way transitions felt smoother, cleaner, like he was solving problems before anyone else realized they existed. Who better than Kanyon? It wasn't just a phrase, it was respect. And for a while, there wasn't a better answer. But wrestling doesn't always reward the people who shape it. Sometimes, it just moves past them. Because years later, there's another image. No broadcast, no cameras that matter. A dark match, the kind that disappears the second it ends. And standing in that ring is the same man who once helped shape how wrestling looked. Only now, it feels different. The presentation is off, cheap, the laughter doesn't land right, not unified, not earned. It fractures. Who better than Kanyon? The words are still there, but they don't sound the same, because somewhere between those two moments, something changed. And like most things in wrestling, it didn't happen all at once. It never does. It starts small. A match that doesn't get followed up. A reaction that goes nowhere. A moment that fades instead of builds. Then another, until the version of you people believed in starts to feel distant. Because in this business, talent isn't enough. Timing matters, perception matters, and perception can be rewritten. Before the silence, there was the work. Chris Kanyon wasn't built in front of the camera. He was built behind it, in the small moments, the in-between spaces, the parts of wrestling most fans never think about. Timing, spacing, transitions, the details that don't get cheers but make everything else possible. Back then, in World Championship Wrestling, you had stars, big ones, loud ones, but underneath that, there were people who made the machine work. Kanyon was one of them. He didn't just perform moves, he connected them. He saw wrestling differently, not as a series of moments, but as something that flowed, like a language. And once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. Other wrestlers noticed, because in wrestling, respect doesn't come from the crowd first. It comes from the locker room. And Kanyon had that, quietly. Guys would watch him, study him, take pieces of what he did, and bring it into their own matches. Not because they were told to, but because it worked, because it made them better. That's the kind of influence that doesn't get announced. There's no graphic for it, no commentary call. It just spreads, move by move, match by match, until suddenly the way wrestling looks is different. And most people don't even know why. Who better than Kanyon? At the time, it wasn't a punchline. It was something closer to truth. Because if you needed something to work, he could make it happen. He could take something that didn't quite connect and find the piece that made it make sense. He could take a moment that felt flat and give it just enough shape to bring it to life. But there's a problem with being that guy, the one who makes everything work. You become invisible, not because you're not important, but because when things run smoothly, people don't stop to ask why. They just accept it and move on. Then everything changes. World Championship Wrestling closes, not slowly, all at once. Careers scatter, momentum disappears overnight. Some names survive the transition, others don't. Canyon walks into something new, a bigger machine, a tighter system, a place where perception matters more than potential. And right away, something feels different. Not wrong, just off. Less time, less focus, less. And in wrestling, less is how it starts. Because you don't lose your place all at once. You lose it in pieces. The matches change. Shorter, more contained. Less room to build, less space to create. And when you take that away from someone who thrives in the details, you don't just change what they do, you change how they're seen. Because in wrestling, you are what you're given. And when what you're given shrinks, so does perception. It builds slowly, week after week, match after match, until something subtle becomes something real. He's no longer shaping the moment. He's part of it, supporting it, helping someone else's story move forward. And if you're paying attention, you feel it. Because the unpredictability fades, the things that made him stand out start to blend in. Who better than Kanyon? The phrase is still there, but it's not being reinforced. And in wrestling, if something isn't reinforced, it disappears. There's a difference between being talented and being chosen. Canyon had the talent, but the system decides who fits. And once it decides, everything else follows. How you're presented, how you're used, how you're remembered. And slowly, without announcement, he starts to shift. Not up, not forward, sideways, then down, until the version of him that once mattered starts to fade. There's always a moment, not the loudest one, the one that changes how you're seen. A segment, hard to explain, but impossible to ignore. The presentation leans a certain way, not toward competition, towards something easier. The crowd responds, but not together. Laughter in pieces. Some of it lands, some of it doesn't. And underneath it, something else. Discomfort. Across the ring, a figure built by the system, protected, defined. And opposite him, Canyon. The contrast is clear. The strikes land, sharp, clean, real. The crowd reacts, then fractures again, because this doesn't feel like a match. There's no rise, no build. It just happens, because the outcome isn't the point. The perception is, and perception is being shaped in real time. The segment ends, and nothing changes. No follow-up, no recovery, just continuation. Because once you're framed a certain way, that becomes who you're allowed to be. After that, the decline isn't dramatic. It's quiet. Fewer opportunities, less visibility, less, until one day, there's a call. Short, clean, final. And just like that, he's out. No ceremony, no acknowledgement. The machine doesn't pause. It just moves on. And in that silence, something different happens. He speaks, not as a character, not as part of a storyline, as himself, carefully, about who he is. Something that had been hidden, managed, carried quietly for years. And for a moment, you expect something to happen, a reaction, a shift. But what comes back is quiet, a few mentions, and then less. Because silence in this business isn't empty, it's selective. And over time, that silence becomes reality. But outside that silence, there are voices, a friend remembering something different. He made you better. No hesitation. He didn't have to, but he did. Small things, timing, placement, details that don't show up on camera, but make everything else possible. That version of him doesn't disappear. It lives on in the people he helped, and maybe that's what stays. Not the way he was presented, but the gap between what he was and what he was allowed to be. Who better than Kanyon? At the beginning, it was an answer. Now, it sounds like something else. A question, a memory, or maybe a warning. Because in wrestling, you don't have to fail to disappear. Sometimes, you just have to stop being seen the same way. And once that happens, everything else follows. The opportunities, the perception, the memory. Until one day, you realize something unsettling. It's not just that someone is gone, it's how easy it was for everything to keep going without them. That's the part that lingers, not the moment, the absence. And once you notice it, you don't stop noticing it. Because it doesn't just happen once, it happens again and again. Different names, different stories, same pattern. And once you see the pattern, you understand something else. This was never just about one person. It was about the system and what happens inside it. Because the system doesn't stop. It doesn't slow down. It doesn't look back. It just keeps moving. And if you're not part of what it needs anymore, you don't stay. You fade. Quietly. Completely. Until all that's left are the people who remember. And the question that never really goes away. Who better than Kanyon? This has been Kayfabe Killers, where the stories don't end when the cameras stop rolling. And the truth doesn't always make the highlight reel.